Um, Good morning. Just finishing a quick note here. I never get the timing right. The app is actually inconsistent. Good morning, James. Good morning, doom scrollers, when you do arrive. I was just saying I never get that's it, just hit that little love heart. I never get the timing of when to start the video right on this platform because Substack I don't quite think has got its shit sorted out just yet. So sometimes, oi dude, all right. So sometimes it says connecting on the top of the screen. And it says it's letting your countless followers know that you're going live. But sometimes that's what it commits to the video, and then sometimes you assume that that's going to be the case, and you start talking, and then it clips off the whole front. There's actually a thing that I've mentioned twice, and I want to mention it a third time now, just because fuck Substack. That's why. It's not salient anymore. It was salient a few days ago, especially when we were talking about the star and moving through that phase of the road seen and not seen. It's there's a woman, I forget her name now, but she runs an account on Instagram called Anatomy of Night. It's not hugely profound. It wouldn't change your day, but it's an interesting data point to keep. Almost like our whole predictive model of the world is made up by the upright stone pillars of Stonehenge. And it's one of those small stones that you want to, it's probably more important than I'm letting on, but you probably want to factor it into your picture of things. And her thesis is that one of our commons that we have that is currently, hey mate, nice to see you here again. One of our commons that is currently being brutally eroded and mindlessly eroded is the window of darkness that we used to get prior to hey Kevin, awesome to have you here. The window of darkness we used to get as human beings prior to our industrialized age, where everything is now lit up and we have so much light pollution. And it's not just for the altruistic environmental intentionality. It's actually, we're missing something. That's it. You're here for the day of judgment. I'll tell you about that in a second. As a people, not having access to that darkness, first of all, like the curation of our inner life is important. And secondly, just to be able to reorient ourselves to the majesty of the universe. Half of its beauty is hidden in the night sky, and it's something we literally don't even notice anymore, and that's her shtick. So I've tried to mention this twice, and somehow Substack keeps, I'm having a terrible hair day, and somehow Substack keeps like trimming that out of the video. So Kevin, if you're arrived here, this is day 20 of a 20-day arc. It's an experiment. It's a bit of a challenge that I set for myself, friends, clients, mentees, you name it. And the subtext of the experiment is finding voice. And I mean that in the archetypal sense, like the throat chakra. What kind of mark are we trying to make in the world? How are we trying to discover our own true voice? That resonance that comes out without filters, without rehearsal, without trying to sound a certain way, which is a mild kind of rebellion or fuck you against what we've normalized now as a society, which is everything has to look like it's got a $10,000 production budget, and the camera little features have to keep flipping to keep the person's attention. And I'm so done with that. And I think I'm trying to lead a bit of a cultural rebellion in my own small way to say we all need to stop that shit. Excuse me. So that is what the 20-day arc was about. And one of the things that I work with, the modality that I teach through is tarot. And it's not because I used that little silly white book in the back of the tarot deck, or that I'm using the Harry Potter tarot or the Mystic Angel Moonbeam tarot or any of that other shit. I just went to the original, the yellow pack with the magician on the front. The Rider-Waite pack with Pamela Coleman Smith was the artist. And I see when people, I should just quickly go fetch it. I see when people reproduce it, they keep trying to fix the drawings. The drawings are not broken, right? There's so much little detail encoded in there. So I did a 6-month project, personal passion project, I have an appointment. So just me just interrupt us for a second. I have an appointment with a shaman in a couple of minutes. What is the word of the day for today? The judgment card. So the judgment card very quickly is represented by the number 20, which is 2 Roman numerals of X. They represent the culmination of a covenant that's now come to an end as a segue to a new covenant. In other words, we mark the covenant with our little X's. And judgment actually means pronouncement in the archetypal sense. It means this is the arc that's finished, and this is what's come up through that you cannot change, that you have to face, that you have to reckon with. It's a reckoning, right? And the key word is pronouncement. And pronouncement is things that we say, but it's also the hardening of reality and fact that literally shows up as the pronouncement. And that's the actual idea that we need to bring to mind when we think of the idea of cosmic judgment. It's not like granddaddy's waving a finger at us, or there's a sword of Damocles hanging over our head. In summary, would you say the word threshold also works with pronouncement? Yes, because it excuse me, it presages this liminal space. We are now actually processing a threshold. Threshold isn't just this bright line between here and there. What human beings are going through right now, one can say, is a threshold. And there's a whole process, there's a whole wisdom of stepping through that threshold. And it's more like a long, protracted birth canal than it is just a moment. And one of those events that needs to happen psychically, karmically, etc., is this reckoning, this pronouncement of what was, that we have to face and swallow and deal with and alchemize and just make peace with, because there's no arguing with it. So that we can step through, we need to greet the future standing naked of the past. We need to greet the future standing naked of the past. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. I'm going to keep going. So the reason I've been following and working with tarot is because it describes an archetypal model of the human psyche in relationship with the cosmos. And when you begin to understand these archetypes, they obviously each refer back to each other in a beautiful holographic sense. Plus, they become these little windows into a holographic depth of context and meaning. So I analyze them separately, archetypally, mythically, astrologically, alchemically, kabbalistically, hermetically, through sacred geometry, the etymology of the word, even just the symmetry, the visual symmetries of the card, and symmetries within the deck. In other words, when a symbol or a motif was kind of echoed between two cards, I allowed a relationship to be inferred, and I inspected that relationship in relation to the emergent synopsis, the gestalt of what the card was telling me, based on all of its attributes, numerically, geometrically, etc. Excuse me. And what emerged was this profound understanding of what a profound teaching modality this is, because I've been trying to teach people Kabbalah and Hermetics and a whole bunch of things. And it's such a difficult project. And I suddenly realized the power of archetypes and the phenomenal power of these cards to basically teach what can be quite complex and can seem abstract. Because what does everyone care about? Everyone cares about me. I care about myself, not in a selfish way. You're supposed to care about yourself. Your ears are supposed to prick up when you hear your name. If somebody starts orienting you into a story or something that you can relate to, that is when the investment of the soul comes online. So it's a very human thing. Good morning, Jeremy. We're talking about archetypes. Excuse me, and why this little video was titled Judgment Day. I'll tie a bow in a minute and bring everybody in. And so when you present the archetype or you do a reading for somebody, suddenly they can orientate around a question of themselves. And then when they are invested and interested in the answer, suddenly they become, their level of interest goes 10x. They suddenly become really interested in the relationship between the archetype and the sacred geometry and the hermetic principles, because now it matters to me. And I realized that such a wonderful medium, such a wonderful way, go through the human heart. Everybody cares about what they care about. Excuse me. I haven't even had a coffee this morning, and I'm struggling with this. So, just to bring everybody up to speed, what I'm saying, I started a 20-day experiment, an exercise that I've set myself before, karmic, yeah. And I said to clients and friends and mentees, and I actually recommend to a lot of you, it's this 20-day arc of going live on a camera, just speaking unrehearsed, unfiltered, not having a script, not having an intentionality for any of it, and then just watching yourself and allowing other people to participate and hold space in that alchemical transformation, that kind of journey arc that you go through over 20 days, because of how it helps you tackle this archetypal context of finding voice. And it's not just finding voice, it's maturing voice. It's making room for your sacred anger. It's making room for your sacred doubt. It's making room for, it's an alchemical process, right? And day 20 is obviously the final day here. I might change the format later. But I noticed at some point, unintentionally, that the number of the day had an echo or a correspondence or a resonance with the tarot card in the major arcana of the same number. So around day 12, 13, I felt a real slump and I was losing the plot and I was a bit disenfranchised and I felt really bummed out. And that's the cards where you encounter in the deck the Hanged Man and Death. Yeah. And then later on, I was talking about our bounds and our limits, and that's when we encounter the demiurgic character of the devil. And then on day 17, I was feeling, I was talking about this idea of how to find our coherence in our journey again, the road seen and then not seen, the hillside hiding, then revealing the way you should take, the road dropping away from you and then catching you just when you thought you would fall. That's a quote from a David White poem called Santiago, but it kind of spells out the journey. And the thing that you're following in the sky, metaphorically speaking, in your own actualization journey, we call the star. It's like it's a symbol. An 8-pointed star is a symbol of navigation and orientation. The 8-pointed compass, the star in the sky that we follow, it's a universal motif. And so didn't then day 18 and day 19 also just have this wonderful resonance? And so I laughed to myself and I thought, well, what is card number 20? Card number 20 is judgment in the major arcana. And as I said to that gentleman whose first name I don't actually really know, he was asking, what's the gist, what's the egregore, the essence, what's the little nub of that card? And the nub of that card is pronouncement. And when we think of revelation and end times and the last moment of something, or when a covenant comes to an end, those two X's are repeated elsewhere in the cards. And one of the places that they're repeated is actually on the last card, where it's got this egg-shaped wreath with a little red bow on the top and a little red bow on the bottom, and that's the world card, and that represents. I thought Mark was the synchronicity and science guy, not that dude, James, but anyway. And the world card and that little wreath, its meaning is basically emergence, how reality is emergent, and how there's this parthenogenesis, this way in which the phoenix of our ongoing journey is born out of the egg, of the phoenix. So the phoenix throws itself into the flames. It's consumed by the flames. That's the final surrender, wherein the egg comes out of the ashes, and then the phoenix continues its onward journey by being born out of that egg. That process is called parthenogenesis. And that's what's symbolized by that wreath. And the wreath in the world card has got two little red ribbons, one on the top and one on the bottom. And those are, of course, in the shape of little X's. And those X's are what we mean by the word covenant. A covenant is not a deal that you make with a god. It's a more of a deal that you make with yourself or with humanity or with a future version of yourself. So a covenant would be, I mark an X over here and then something else marks an X over there. So that would be like me bringing in my truth and commitment, but also meeting the world exactly where it is, right? There's a lot of ways of interpreting that, and I don't want to rush through it, but basically the context of seeing two X's is covenant, and two X's next to each other, we also know in Roman numerals, is the letter 20. That's why the judgment card is the 20th day. And in the judgment card, you can see it looks like a little depiction from the book of Revelations that we imagine. There's all these people kind of standing up out of their stone coffins in the middle of a gray ocean. And there's this angel that manifests in the sky, and it's blowing this trumpet. It's issuing a pronouncement. Yeah? And I got to thinking of the word pronouncement. And if you look at the way a river lies after 10,000 years of meandering and settling, if you look at the way a mountain is shaped after all that upheaval and erosion, what you are seeing is the pronouncement of fate. It is all of the hermetic laws by which everything exists that now interacted with each other over time, and what is left, what shows through, is the pronouncement of this cycle, of this moment. Yeah. If life is emergent and we are emergent as well, it means that whatever we call fate is that which is now pronounced in this moment. So I say often that we don't run out of time, actually. We run out of cycles. So the second hand will just keep ticking along on the clock. But the minute ends, yeah, and the minutes will just keep spinning around, but the hour ends, and the day ends, and the month ends, and the year ends. Conversations end, relationships end, arcs in our career come to an end. And it's not that we run out of time to do what we want to do in those things, it's that we run out of cycles. Of all the things that I wanted to say, I can shoehorn it all in here on day 20. I can make this longer than it needs to, but this 20th day has to end. And then whatever I achieved in this 20-day arc, and this wasn't intentional, I figured this out as we progressed. It's all kind of come to me today in the last day, the final day. Yeah? I'm trying to do a reckoning. A reckoning, another word for reckoning, is the bookkeeping, the accounting, the balancing of the books between everything that happened before. And now I'm trying to qualify what is the pronouncement, because I won't get this 20 days again, and I can't shoehorn anything magically now into this last moment. So now this whole thing has to stand as it is. C'est la vie. Whatever I got from it, I got from it. Whatever was ever going to be got from it, I can distill that and do another version of retrospective, which is more than just closure. It's trying to distill the experience, the wisdom from that experience. But I can't plant more seeds now. I can't change the way I tended that garden. This is the day of harvest. This is the reckoning, right? And another lovely idea to think about to do with judgment and reckoning and pronouncement is when you balance the books, you want to come out with some kind of result, some kind of figure. Was this positive or was this negative? And how do we figure out whether it was positive or negative, right? And the little kind of story that I tell is, imagine you get to the end of your life and there's this magic book in front of you, and it's got two columns, two entries. In the one entry, you write down everything that you did or chose or committed to or allowed to happen in your life that caused you regret, that you wish you would have done differently, that don't make you proud of yourself, that you consider wasted opportunity, wasted energy, wasted attention, inauthenticity. Why were you not more like you, Let's call that column regret. And on the other side, everything that you would do again that made you who you are, even if it was difficult stuff that you would that you consider a worthwhile or a sound investment of your energy and your attention, and it contributed towards your fulfillment and your actualization. And let's say that column is called meaning. What is the purpose of life for anybody, or even for a species, even for us here together, if not to make it so and to engineer our spending of energy and attention in such a way that we get to the end of our cycles when these pronouncements arrive, and that the pronouncement is that there was more meaning than regret. How simple is that? How simple is that? So I'm then brought into question with what were my regrets over this time. Wouldn't you say the regrets helped shape you into the exact moment? Yes. Let's make that point really clear, Jeremy. A life without regret is unrealistic. I'm not talking about the kind of regrets with, oh, shit, I wish I had done that differently, because even that has gold in it. It makes us learn and it makes us realize who we want to be instead. I said earlier in this arc that part of the findings or the learnings or the insight from this 20-day live challenge is that authenticity has to be practiced. We don't get a manual for how to be, and we are emergent, right? And the reality that we're trying to operate in is emergent also. So it's not like we knew how to be. We can't import old versions of wisdom and just expect them to work. We have to try things. And sometimes only more when you try something do you realize, oh shit, that's not me. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel authentic. And it's by saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing that you discover who you actually are. There is regret in that moment and remorse in that moment, but that's not the kind of regret I'm talking about. The regret I'm talking about, I need to distinguish from that kind of constructive regret, which creates actually great meaning. Your point is true. The kind of regret I'm talking about is when it's all said and done, when the cycle's over, there was a different way that you would have preferred to have shown up. There was a different way that you would have preferred to be, that you would have preferred to inhabit that moment, that you can see now in hindsight, oh shit, there's such an enormous gift or invitation or opportunity that I missed. And now the cycle is over and I can't have my time again. And now I can't go, and all I can do is distill the wisdom and the pain from that, right? But there are even things, even in that can have little or no meaning. Little or no meaning. Just consider the unkindness that's happening in the world because of the enormous division, the suppurating wound of division that exists in American politics at the moment. You know, no one got to their mistrusts dishonestly, but now it's such a festering wound that now it's not easy to heal. Even the cleaning of it feels like an abrasion. It's just not an easy thing. There's lots happening in there that I would qualify as going purely under regret, because it's so hard to distill meaning from that. Yeah. That's kind of what I mean. And I know for myself, there are moments in my life where the fucking silver lining of that little bit that I can claw back and go, oh shit, at least I learned the cost that I had to somebody else, or the cost that I had to my own innocence by making whatever choice I made. I'm not super proud of that, man. I don't know how much meaning I can draw from that other than like that real sting of remorse and regret and missed opportunity. And I let the cycle die, and that person went on, and I'll never encounter them again. I can never fix that again, you know? That's the kind of regret I'm talking about. And so I hope that helps us land on the same page there. So when I reflect back now and I think to myself, what would I have done differently? You know, there's a nice framing that I teach, which comes from the corporate world, comes from Agile. And it basically asks the question, if I had my time again, if that division is giving me a sense of purpose. Yeah, man. Fucking 100%, dude. So now this might sound really cheap and lame, but I actually need you guys to engage and text and hit the like button. And it's not because I'm shy of attention or likes. It's because I want to teach that infernal fucking machine, the algorithm, that here is a conversation that human beings value. And if we don't normalize this form of engagement and appreciation of this connection, it's going to be one of those things that just gets lost to the mill of regret. Yeah. So I was saying, how do I qualify my my regrets and what has meaning? Is I go through this mystical phrasing, right? I call it the corporate book of the dead, or where what is the spell that I can cast or say that's going to give me now the distillation of meaning and regret? And it goes like this: if I had my time again, what would I choose to keep? What would I choose to stop? And what would I choose to start? If I had my time again, What would I choose to keep? What would I choose to stop? And what would I choose to start? And I can ask that at the end of a meal. I can ask it at the end of a vacation. I can ask that at the end of a day, at the end of a 2-week work cycle. I can ask that at the end of a 20-day live challenge. If I had my time again, what would I choose to keep? What would I choose to stop? And what would I choose to start? And then, what were my griefs and my regrets and my remorses? And then what were my triumphs? What were my wins? What were my highlights and takeaways? So I think I'll write that down. Actually, I don't want to come up with it all on the fly. And I'll pen it into an essay and I'll put it down, or I might come back onto such a video and then, extol the virtues of such a thing. Because now that I realize in hindsight, it's the second time I've done this 20-day thing. I think that it's about 3 years apart, but I'm realizing what a meaningful and powerful transformational arc it is for any human being. And so now I actually want to package it and make sure that it goes into the corporate book of the dead so that we can now revive this idea of ritualizing our arcs of evolution and ritualizing also the endings, ritualize also transitions. Yeah. Because if we don't ritualize our transitions, if we don't take a leaf of sensibility from what people were doing when they wrote things like the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and obviously to say the corporate Book of the Dead is slightly tongue-in-cheek, it's a joke, but it's a good joke because it hits the funny bone and it's true and it's relevant. And the sense-making in all of that was how people ritualized transitions and they ritualized arcs of their life. Hey, Jen. And I want to normalize that. So that's one of the biggest learnings. And I thought what I might do is just thank everybody that's been participating over the last 20 days that have, initially I came on and I said, oh, you just go on camera and talk for 5 minutes, just speak about whatever on your heart. And next minute I was running a 20-40 minute blabbing meander. They're actually all valuable pieces. None of it was nonsense. But it requires staying power and it requires investment from human beings. So I wanted to say I'm grateful for that, because without that that form of necessary tension and resistance, without your presence, that alchemy wouldn't have happened. There's a story about the caterpillar and the butterfly, yeah? And I love it because the caterpillar at some point in time knows it needs to go through a transition, so it pulls itself away from the world. Not even knowing what the full plan is, it makes a chrysalis and it goes into that. And inside that chrysalis, it utterly dissolves, not unlike the phoenix that we spoke about earlier on. And then doesn't just the butterfly cells actually begin to arrive in this gooey biology, and then the latent immune system, whatever's left of it, now of the caterpillar, now starts attacking the incoming butterfly cells. Miraculously, it turns out that the biologists and scientists that study these life forms tell us how wonderfully that we fight against our own transformation. The caterpillar is resisting the arrival of the butterfly through its immune system unconsciously. Like, that is part of the alchemy. And then it turns out that the full arrival of that butterfly couldn't have happened without that form of resistance. That was actually necessary to the full formation of the thing that popped out the other side. I like that. And so if we're not operating in tension with other people, in space with other people, in this kind of modality, how much does that rob us of that necessary tension? Yeah. So that's my source of gratitude and appreciation. That's sort of the main things. And then I hope everybody got the point that I made about Judgment Day and pronouncement and covenant and all the rest of it, because I feel like I'm entering into a transition phase, or entering into the phase where I'm trying to exit into a new arc of my life. And I've been waiting for like a kind of a reckoning moment where I can close the books. And this was a great way to do it. And it's brought this idea to mind again. And so what I want to do is something that I've been remiss in doing, and then I want to close off. So I made some notes. This Sunday, I'm going live with Chetan. So Chetan is my collaborator in the A Better Way project. A Better Way is the umbrella under which my work is living at the moment. And I'm looking for collaborators. I'm looking for collaborators, people in the world who are who resonate with the following idea. There are no only ways or right ways to do anything, but there have to be better and worse ways. And then there have to be better and worse ways even to qualify the answer to that question. And what we need is a unification bout. We can't draw ourselves back into old, ancient initiation traditions, but we need to distill their wisdom and find a way to play nice with them, because the vault of wisdom that lives in those traditions is currently being lost, and we are absolutely living an animistic reality that our sensibilities to live that animistic reality is atrophied. We don't have an inner life. We don't have an inner dialogue normalized in the world. Normalized, yeah, in an urban setting. I'm not talking about those lucky few of us that can live on the outside of or the edges of society. I'm talking about those ones that are stuck here. Now, I'm called to a mystical calling, but it feels like the earth is going through a very strange. It has been for a while, yeah. I've got a profound mystical calling, but the kind of mystical calling that I've got lives in perfect tension with a life calling. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I live right here. I am talking about a new paradigm. Absolutely. 1000% I'm talking about a new paradigm, Jeremy. I'm talking about paradigm shifts, one which changes the horizon of what we believe is possible. The fundamental principle of emergence means things come together to cohere, to create a new whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, and more importantly, where a horizon of possibilities now open that was not possible before. Yeah, and that means that human beings, any human being, can make choices today and can steer their life and can make investments of their energy and attention in such a way that they shape the version of themselves that will wake up out of that bed tomorrow. It's possible, right? But now we've got to start thinking really, really long term, because we need to start thinking about planting trees under whose shade we will never get to sit and the fruits of which we're not really going to eat. We need to start thinking about the future human. And I mean fucking seriously, not just like, oh, just thinking about the future human. We need to really start fucking thinking about our covenant with the future human, because there is an enormous arc of meaning, like a battery, right, that exists. And it's not activated right now. And we are right at the midpoint here. And as far forward as you can think, about every child and human being that's yet to open their eyes to the world, they're going to look back at us one day and they're either going to thank us for our courage and our vision to link arms and hold the line and say our generational trauma and our bullshit doesn't go past us. We need to unfuck this somehow. We need to start thinking about what the enormous empowerment we're sitting on top of, and the stewardship, the custodianship of the human story that we are now holding the pen for casually and not knowing what the fuck we're doing. We need to figure out the authorship of that thing by figuring out the authorship of ourselves. So as above, so below, exactly what goodwill we want to have for the future human and for our legacy is that word, we want to have for our own future self as well, right? And love thy neighbor as thou love thyself. That's what that actually means. Now, none of that is possible unless they have a vital root connection to our intentionality and what we are putting in place for that possibility to arrive, which now brings us into a reflective moment to look back at our ancestors and say, how is it that we're carrying on, standing on the bones and the shoulders and the spilled blood of so many people who gave their lives to make this opportunity possible for us, and we're just shitting on it? It's so dull and so unevolved, and we can turn that around. And how we turn it around is through this medium of initiation. It doesn't need to be white robes and chicken bones under the moonlight. It just needs to be being brought into relationship with the empowerment that you have and the responsibility that comes with. That's it. To the measure of your own calling. And all of us need to be introduced to this aspect of our own craft and our own calling, our own star in the sky, our own form of actualization that we are following. Now, that can sound complex, but it doesn't necessarily need to be, but it does need to be brought home into a coherent fashion. we do need to have a unification bout. We do need to start making applying a universal theory of everything, something that can at last reconcile and tidy up and wash clean our sciences, our theologies, and our philosophies from all the nonsense that pervades them at the moment, because they're each broken in different ways, right? And we're each captured differently by those three projects, and they do not cohere. They do not cohere. And a universal theory of everything is something that I'm more than a little way into drafting. And it actually rests on universal principles like hermetics and the sensibilities of an animist worldview, that we are all in relationship with intelligence and consciousness and intentionality that sometimes is non-human and non-visible, but no less real. Just because something is non-material doesn't mean it's immaterial. Yeah. Now, what I wanted to say is this Sunday, I'm going live with Chetan every Sunday. So now I'm speaking to you from the future. For me, this is Thursday. What date is it? Thursday, the 1st of May. And many of you will be watching this on Wednesday night, on the 31st or 30th of April. I would love to work with you on this. Jeremy, just, of course, yes, motherfucker, yes. You find me on Substack or online, just send me a message, get involved. We'll tell you what we're doing. It has to be coherent and structured and sane and measured, but don't let that caution overshadow my enthusiasm or vice versa. Absolutely, yes. We're looking for collaborators, and we want anyone who feels called to be part of the solution more than part of the problem. 100%. And we've all got different ways to contribute. Now, this Sunday, and I'll release times and dates so I don't confuse anyone. It might be your Saturday evening. I'm going live on YouTube. It's a weekly session. I go with Chetan, and we're literally talking about the agile process of building this platform, this virtual platform of products and solutions, and to use that joke, spells for the corporate book of the dead, things that we can actually tangibly use that can live perfectly fine in an urban context, in a mum and dad family, raising a kid, going to the shops, going to work in a corporate setting, and trying to make it all work, but bringing back these missing elements so that human beings can now start developing a coherent collective map forward for how we get back into covenant with this enormous arc of meaning that goes all the way back to our earliest ancestors and reaches as far forward as we can imagine. Yeah. And the only reason, one of the biggest reasons that these things are not possible is because we don't believe that they're possible. And one of my jobs is to try and find that the words and the presence to try and explain to you how I feel inside of myself. I am absolutely 100% fucking driven to make that reality happen in the world one way or another. And I don't know how to do it, but I'm not going to let all of the naysaying and the nagging and, what can one person do? Not with that attitude, man. I'm going to figure it out. And I've been figuring it out for 5 years of my life. I left work in March 2023. And I've put my family through quite a difficult period to be able to get here, to arm myself with the necessary information, the necessary eloquence, the necessary authenticity, the necessary gravitas and insight and philosophy, and trying to pull it all together on a page and trying to get people to collaborate in this so that we can make something happen. What's the worst that can happen? You spend your life trying to do the most noble thing in the universe. Fuck it, I'm in, So this week, I'm going to talk about that. After this Saturday, in a week's time, I'm going to kick off a session like this where I literally just do a Saturday service. It's like when we used to go to church. Just a gathering, a bit of fellowship, a poem or a little reading from something or somewhere that's secular, but still spiritual, that still makes contact with a full human experience and speaks to the present moment that we're actually are, and speaks to the present moment. So that's going to come up. My current writing arc is talking about how we straddle these multiple lives that we're trying to help cohere. So our personal development, our relationships in our containers, and then our work contexts. And it's the perennial work-life balance conundrum that we're actually trying to create a protocol that's based on these hermetic universal principles that actually just works in any context that doesn't require somebody in an office would be able to pick it up and it would add to their lives, both in their actualization journeys at work and then as a human being overall. Yeah, I think I've given you all the highlights. I'll probably put some of the notes in the little blurb underneath this video. Again, I want to close out the space and thank everybody for coming to pronouncement day or judgment day. I hope this is the kind of revelation that we can look forward to. But the future is going to be bright only if the better versions of ourselves can get there. And I've said this before, each of us become who we repeatedly choose to be. Yeah. And so what we need now is we need thought leaders. We need poets. We need mystics. We need storytellers. We need the myth weavers. We need the initiators. We need those people. But more than that, we need them to suddenly realize the wisdom of coherence, of coming together and acting and demonstrating and showing the example of what a human family looks like in action. The human family, man. And, everyone's out there building a brand and spruiking this philosophy or that philosophy. And how I know whether they're someone to pay attention to or follow is if they've picked up the signal yet, the signal that says, oh shit, we need to pull together. Because convergence and coherence is the only response to its exact opposite. The Copernican shift, motherfucker, you have arrived at exactly the right moment. I've just been talking about the next Copernican paradigm shift. Copernican paradigm shift that needs to happen. And it's in relation to, I'll link you to an essay I wrote called A Universal Theory of Everything. And it's about restoring our place back at the heart of the cosmos, not in a silly way, but just challenging our understanding of that reductionist purview that we began to explore when Copernicus changed the trajectory of our psychology. Yeah. So necessary, but it's now run its course. And now we need to see that putting the sun at the center is actually this recursal fractal pattern that actually describes the design of the entire cosmos. And then we actually paradoxically need to put ourselves back in a geocentric, a central location in all of this so that we can orient ourselves, so that we can go manufacture meaning again. Yeah. If I haven't described it well, catch me offline, please, and I will explain myself, or nag me somehow and I will create a video or an essay or something. But this doesn't end here, everyone. I think we've literally just begun. I'm quite revved up to do something and to not stop. So if anybody was animated or resonated with this, please come and find me. Please come and find me. Please come and be part of the solution. I absolutely believe something is possible, and this is just the beginning. Mark here, formerly Synchronicity Insights. I can't keep up, Mark, but you know what I'm on about, so great. But thanks very much, and it begins here. It begins here. Every ending really is just a beginning. I type fast. Yeah, I see that. Folks, I've spoken very long. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Take care.